There are people who grow up hearing the same words again and again. That's not for you. You won't be able to. You should accept your limits. It doesn't always come from hate. Sometimes it comes from fear, or from the habit of telling others how far they're allowed to go. What's curious is that sometimes the person who changes your life doesn't know they're doing it because they never meant to. This is a story that begins on the playing fields and reaches far beyond them. It's a story about what happens when someone decides not to ask for permission. When Jim Abbott was growing up, sports weren't just a game. In Flint, Michigan, sports were identity. It was a hard town. You played hard, or you didn't belong. Jim wanted to play baseball, but more than that, he wanted to fit in. To do that, he had to find his own way, because he couldn't play the game the way everyone else did. There were no perfect fields, no speeches, just a driveway, a brick wall, and repetition. He would draw a strike zone on the wall, throw the ball, and then figure out how to catch it. Again and again. Everything was trial and error, experimenting, adjusting, learning what worked. He never thought of it as overcoming anything. This was simply how he learned to play. It was a time of discovery, not of becoming someone special, but of finding a way to belong. That path began to show results. In college, Jim Abbott was no longer just adapting. He was standing out. His mechanics worked, his control was real, and his place on the team was unquestioned. The next step was inevitable. Major League Baseball. At the MLB level, the stage became bigger, but the essence stayed the same. Abbott didn't arrive as a curiosity. He arrived to compete, and he did. Wins, respect. And one night, that would be remembered forever. A complete game. 9 innings. No hits allowed. A no-hitter. But even that moment, the highest point of his playing career, didn't end up defining his true impact. Over time, Jim Abbott began to realize something else. People weren't talking about his numbers or his performances. They were talking about what his story made them believe about themselves. And that's when he began to share it. Not as a lesson, but as a possibility. Years later, Jim Abbott's inspiration reached a different field. Football. Shaquem Griffin grew up with one hand, and for a long time, the world saw that before it saw anything else. But Shaquem had already seen what was possible. He had seen someone else do it before him. Someone who refused to let the game define how he was supposed to play it. Jim Abbott had already shown that a different way was still a way forward. Shaquem didn't try to change the game. He adapted to it. And when he finally reached the NFL, he wasn't proving something to scouts or critics. He was carrying forward an idea. That limitations don't get the final word.
41st pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Shaquem Griffin, linebacker, Central Florida. Yeah! Go Hawks!
That same inspiration didn't stop at football. It reached a sport where limitations are exposed immediately. Mixed martial arts. Nick Newell was born with one arm. And in a sport built on leverage, grip, and control, the world saw only what he lacked. But Nick had already seen a different example. He had seen someone prove that adapting wasn't weakness. That finding your own way was still a way to compete. Jim Abbott had already shown that the rules of the game don't decide who belongs. Nick didn't ask for adjustments. He stepped into the cage as it was. And he won. Not because the sport changed, but because he did.
What do you want to say?
He's out there throwing no-hitters against the best baseball players in the world. So why can't I wrestle? Why can't I fight? Why can't I do this?
The idea kept traveling, this time to a different game, soccer. Carson Pickett was born with one hand, and in a sport where balance, movement, and coordination are everything, the difference was always visible. But long before the national team, Carson had already seen what was possible. She had seen someone else compete at the highest level without asking the game to change. Jim Abbott had already proven that belonging doesn't require permission. Carson didn't play to make a statement. She played to be part of the game. And step by step, that path led her to the highest level of her sport. Not as a symbol, but as a player.
To Jim Abbott, if we show him this, after you watch...
I feel like I have a really big responsibility of carrying on the legacy that Jim Abbott created. It almost feels like that's my job.
Years later, Jim Abbott's inspiration reached another arena, wrestling. Anthony Robles was born with one leg, and in a sport built on balance, leverage, and control, the odds were obvious from the start. But Robles didn't grow up without examples. As a kid, he had already seen what was possible. He had seen Jim Abbott compete at the highest level without asking the sport to adapt to him. Jim Abbott showed him that finding a different way didn't mean lowering the standard. Robles didn't wrestle to be an exception. He wrestled to be the best. And when he won an NCAA championship, it wasn't a story about what he was missing. It was a story about what belief can build.
Having one hand is just how I know how to live. So when people ask me, oh, is it harder if you have one hand? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't ever had two hands, so I can't really compare it. When I was little, my parents were always like, yeah, there was this pitcher, he had one hand too, and his name was Jim Abbott. He was a big inspiration in my life. I admire his commitment and how he pursued his goals and his dreams and made it to the major leagues. It was just amazing to think that anybody can do it.
Hi, Jade.
Hi.
I'm Jim Abbott. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great.
It was crazy to just turn around and see Jim Abbott there. That's Jim Abbott. Like, he's famous.
I remember being in 10th grade. You know, those were some of the most difficult years to kind of navigate your way through, especially when you're growing up a little bit different. See, now I used to have to turn it, and you do it a little bit differently, right?
Yeah, when I catch the ball, I bring the ball up and I pop it out with this arm and like roll it down, and then I pull it off, and then I throw.
All right, you ready to try a little baseball?
Sure.
Now the pressure's on.
You're the one who should be scared.
Oh, very nice. Good hit. That's all right. That's what you're supposed to do. Line drive, right back up the middle. And to see someone like her, that type of confidence, she's an inspiration to me. I'm going to tell my daughters about her.
No matter what you think your limits are, if you work hard enough, you honestly can do whatever you want.
For Jim Abbott, the story didn't end on the field. It became something bigger, helping kids see what's possible before the world tells them it's not.
We were able to coordinate a meetup with him at Comiskey Park when they played the White Sox. Every time I would hit a barrier, I'm like, man, Jim's already broken this barrier. Like, this isn't gonna be a problem. We'll figure it out.
In high school, I threw a complete game, and I get in the car to drive home, and I've got a voicemail from a California number. I'm like, who from California would be calling me?
Kevin, this is Jim Abbott calling. I wanted to call and say congratulations. Just rooting for you. Wanted you to know that.
You do what you can do.
I'm so proud of all of you, of all of us. You know, I know the struggle, I know the journey, I know it's not easy, and I'm just so proud to be a part of this community. I'm proud to have played a small part in your lives. It means the world to me. It is how I'd like to be remembered.
If this story made you think of someone who once doubted themselves, share it. Because sometimes all a person needs is to know that someone else has already walked that path before. Jim Abbott's story isn't just about sports. It's about impact, about presence, about what happens when someone chooses to show up exactly as they are. And this isn't the end. In our next episode, we travel to a day many consider the greatest final in sports history. For many, it was the greatest final of all time. 5 sets, nearly 5 hours, darkness, and 2 men who refused to lose. But what happened that day didn't resolve a rivalry. It made it eternal. Because Wimbledon 2008 didn't answer a question, it left one open. Who was truly the greatest? The answer isn't on the scoreboard.